when people are like, oh my gosh, you're too young for heart disease. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not, because cardiac arrest does not care how old
Yeah.
you are, who you are, where you live, what you do. It comes for anybody.
3 to 4-ish weeks until I finally actually got to see my scars and see the defibrillator. And I can remember standing in front of the mirror and just smiling so big because I absolutely love my scars. I think they're beautiful now.
Welcome everyone to the podcast of the Heart Warrior Project. My name is Jellis and I am a fellow cardiac arrest survivor. Now, I started this project to provide support to anyone out there who also went through a cardiac arrest by talking to fellow survivors. Occasionally, I also have cardiac health experts on the podcast to talk about just ways on how to improve life after surviving a cardiac arrest. Now, if you're familiar with, the online community of other people out there spreading awareness on cardiac arrests, you might have heard of Bethany and Hanna Keime, who are two sisters who have both been diagnosed with HCM, which stands for Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is the number one killer of student athletes. They both have started a project called HeartCharged. Now, their project is aimed at spreading awareness around cardiac arrests and screenings to prevent death due to undiagnosed heart conditions. And in this episode, I had the pleasure of welcoming both of them here on the show, where we talk about a variety of different things, from living with a heart disease to living with an ICD to life after a sudden cardiac arrest, because Hannah had actually a cardiac arrest, and how both of them are just dealing with all the changes that have happened in their life. Do definitely take a look at HeartCharged by going directly to getheartcharged.org and, to see all the amazing work they're doing, because they truly are doing some good things out there. Now, you can also find the link to their websites linked up in the show notes, which you can find in the description of this episode. With that, I hope you will find much value and support here in this episode with Heart Warriors Bethany and Hanna Keime. Bethany, Hannah, welcome to the podcast of the Heart Warrior Project. It's really awesome to finally do this with both of you.
Thank you
So
so
great
much
to
for
be
having
on
us.
there with you.
So, let's see how to best start. I guess a good way could be, because you both have been diagnosed with the same heart condition, right? Which is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I'm curious,
Yeah.
how did you both get diagnosed? Do you remember the day? How old were you both? Was it on the same day for both of you? Could you kind of, walk us through that?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I know the date. It's an anniversary day for me. That day changed my life. So
Yeah.
so it's a day I won't forget. So it was September 13th, 2013 for me is when I went in and got the official diagnosis. But we had heard the word hypertrophic cardiomyopathy probably earlier that year, because our aunt, our mom's sister, was diagnosed, and went through valve replacement. She was seeing a cardiologist regularly, but she didn't realize she had this condition until they kind of like said something, and then they were like, oh well, yeah, that those symptoms you're having are common with your condition. And she was diagnosed with HCM. HCM is generally genetic, and there are, besides me and Bethany, we have 7 other siblings. So we come from a big family. So statistically, one of us for sure, had the possibility of having HCM. So our aunt was very much told our mom and was like, hey, like definitely get the kids checked. And so my mom decided to have me, out of all the kids that were left at home, to have me go in first, and obviously to get an appointment with a good pediatric cardiologist. Also, our pediatrician actually dismissed us after telling him, hey, we have family history, which is a big, red flag, warning sign. He listened with his stethoscope and was like, no, I don't think you have one, but you guys can go ahead and like go see a specialist or whatever. And thank goodness we did. And then so it took about 6 months to get that appointment. And then come September 13th, it was only me and my mom and I got diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And because of that, and them telling me that it was, oh, I had it severe, that the thickness was, very substantial, that I'm going to need to stop literally doing anything that would get my heart rate up, which was kind of heartbreaking for me because I was, prior, I was playing basketball, I was dancing, I was being like very athletic, very competitive. And so with that news, it kind of put a lot of pressure. My mom was like, oh my goodness, I need to get the rest of my kids checked. And so she goes in to call, like, hi, can I schedule appointments? And they're like, yeah, we have a few, some in like 4 months. And my mom's like, no, 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 no. Like, my daughter just got diagnosed with this severe deadly heart condition. I need to make sure that my other kids are safe and who has it or whatnot. So my mom fought, and then Bethany and then our other little sister, I believe, they both went in a week later to get, and then that's when Bethany found out that she also had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but not to the severe extent as I did. So just from there, our paths kind of looked different, though we had the same condition, kind of the regulations and what we each were allowed to do. But we're very grateful that we had each other, and that's kind of always been our foundation of like, hey, we're not going through this alone, and other people should know that there's other people out there like us.
Wait, why did you have to go first? Was it just because you were home?
No, so we both were home. So I was 14 when I got diagnosed, like first month of freshman year. Great timing.
Yeah.
And then Bethany was 17. She was a senior in high school. And the only reason I went first is because I had had some fainting episodes
Mm.
and things like that, that my mom was like, oh, maybe, but really, I mean, we're religious people. I think God was
Mm.
like me going first because I don't think if one of my other siblings who didn't have it would have went, it would have not been like, as much pressure to get the other of us checked as like urgently as needed. So it was because I was showing warning signs, which people were dismissing, but that kind of made a concern of like, oh yeah, there were things that, hey, let's go follow up on that you've had. And that's really what, yeah, made me out of everybody. I was the chosen one, the first,
Well, that makes
yeah, the
sense.
first one to go get checked.
Wow. So actually, quite a lot changed for many people in a very short time then, because you then had to go a week later, and then you also heard the same news. How
Yeah.
was it for you to hear that you had it as well?
Yeah, so it honestly leading up to it, I kid you not, as Hannah said, we are religious people, and I just remember praying every night, like asking God, please, I don't want this, I don't want to have this condition, because I had a dream to like be a ballerina, and I was in a full-time, I actually had just left my high school that I was at to join Miami City Ballet to dance full time in their pre-professional program. So I was really excited about that, and I just was a week into the program, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have this diagnosis, like I don't want to have it. I was really scared, and I just remember every time I prayed, God basically saying, you're gonna have it, but everything's gonna be okay. So I go to that appointment, and the doctor basically said, yes, you have it as well. It wasn't as thick as Hannah's, because with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it's that left ventricle wall in your heart which is
Yeah,
abnormally
yeah.
thick, so mine wasn't as thick.
Okay. Yeah.
And then actually at that doctor's appointment, because they didn't know how my heart was going to react while I was dancing, and how I was going to respond, basically they put me on medication, and then I wore a bunch of, at the time they were really big, obnoxious looking heart halters to dance, to see how my heart was under stress and under physical activity like that, to see how long I could keep dancing.
And can you still do that? Can you still have you been able to continue dancing?
So unfortunately not. I have been able to, though. I did get to graduate with a BFA in dance performance, which was awesome, and I loved getting to dance for as long as I could. But unfortunately, my heart worsened, and that left ventricle wall actually has now thickened. Um, So unfortunately, I can't keep up like I used to. And I feel it. Like I used to like, blow it off a little bit, but it's crazy. When I do get a dance time to time, which sometimes you see on our content on our Instagram page at HeartCharged, but I can't dance like the 8 hours a day I used to.
And is it what's like the symptoms that you get? Like, are you more like tired very fast? Like, what both of symptoms do you have actually?
Yeah, so the tired, out of breath very quickly, like I feel like I can't breathe, or there'll be like a really tightness in my chest, that will happen, and then I like clench up because I'm scared, like I feel like it's like stuck my heart, and then just the rapid heart rate where you can see literally my heart beating out of my chest.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. What about you,
It's not, no.
Hannah? Like, what kind of symptoms do you actually
Um,
experience?
So yeah, I mean, same as her. So I have definitely we've both had our share of like syncope or fainting episodes. Definitely shortness of breath. Which at one point when I was living in Utah for a bit, thought I was having shortness of breath just due to like the altitude. We're from Miami, so we're below sea level here, and then the elevation of going to like 4,000 feet. I thought, oh, I'm just here. That's kind of why I'm running shortness out of breath when I'm like walking uphill and stuff. And then I found out I was like in heart failure. And then it was like, oh, that's explaining that. And then I've also had definitely same as her rapid heartbeats. I mean, we're like small little girl, so like I can definitely see my heart if I look down, like beating, out of my chest sometimes if it's really bad, like in my throat, or when you see like our pulse. And then as she was explaining with, it feels like almost sometimes your heart gets stuck, like yeah, I have that as well. It's like, I have arrhythmias because of having hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and your heart is overworking. It can lead to irregular heartbeats or to, tachycardias, which we both have. And so, yeah, that's not a very comfortable feeling at all. For a long time, I had what I felt like, oh my gosh, I felt like everything was closing in, like, as if your heart stops, and you're like, I can I breathe? And then it would start again. And it wasn't until like 2 years ago when I was put on a heart halter, that it like when I was, making my little journal of like, hey, at 9:15, I had this episode and seeing what came back. And then I was able to be like, that's an arrhythmia. That's what I've been having because they weren't catching it. Like, yes, we both have implanted defibrillators, but they're not always like catching the smaller things that a heart halter can catch. Um, so that was really grateful because sometimes it's like what's nice to having Bethany is comparing our symptoms, right? Of like, hey, do you get this? Or like, hey, what did you learn from the cardiologist about this symptom that you're having? Because sometimes you feel like not like you're losing your mind, but you're like, hey, like, oh, I felt something and then, oh, it's not showing up, or wait, but like I felt it, or hey, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling lightheaded? Or hey, do you get this dizziness as well? So it's always nice to kind of compare notes, and that's kind of a big thing with warning signs and heart conditions that we try to promote is comparing yourself with others in the sense of like, hey, somebody average your age, like, hey, I can't run 3 laps, even though people my age can run 3 laps. Oh, that's kind of like an indicator of, okay, something may be wrong. Let's follow up on that.
Hmm. Has it been helpful for both of you to have each other through this? I can only imagine that it has, right? But has it?
No, immensely.
Yeah.
No, it
Definitely.
immensely. Like, there's just something about knowing that, like, yes, it looks different, right? Like, I had to stop doing what I love doing,
Mm.
and like in the sense of, oh, I loved dancing, but I was able to find my own path and it was beautiful. Like I never was like, oh, screw you, Bethany, you gotta dance, because I knew how important it was to her. So I was happy that like, oh, she was still able to do that for as long as she was able to. But it's just nice to have a support of like, it's one thing to have a sister, it's another thing to have a sister who has the same heart condition as you, because there is no cure to HCM. It's everything is about lifestyle changes. And when your life changes, it's nice to have people that you can rely on and to be able to have somebody who gets it on a different level, that has kind of bonded our sisterhood in a way that you know, would have never guessed, but you kind of, in a way, my heart better than you did before because your heart is also beating, rapidly or irregularly
Yeah.
or or things like that.
Wow. And this was 10 years ago, right? Yeah.
10
Yeah,
years
so it'll
ago
be
in
coming up,
September will
yeah.
Yeah.
be.
Crazy. Wow. A lot of changes that you both had to go through, right? Um, and like giving up things that you used to love doing. I mean, I have had the same happen to me, right? I have a different condition, but yeah, man, it's been so hard actually for me to just be okay with giving up those things. And especially if you love, like for you, both like dancing or any other sports. How have you actually, for you, for example, Bethany, how have you been able to accept that you can't dance in the same way anymore like you used to, or other changes?
Um, I think I've accepted it as like it was a gift, and like Hannah said, I was lucky to have got to do it for as long as I could and to enjoy it and to have those memories. But I also look at it as a way that I think like maybe I'm on a different path now, and finding who I am, and I would call myself, I'm a really big advocate now, especially for other people with heart conditions and helping that. So I think to be able to find my voice in a different way, and now that's through advocacy and work like that. But definitely it's hard to think like I worked so hard and this was going to be my life and this is what I had planned out, and all the hours and the
Yeah,
money and the time spent. But a big thing that we always say to people is like your life doesn't end with a diagnosis, right? So unfortunately though, things had to change. I think it's a beautiful thing when you can be grateful for the diagnosis and then learn different ways that it can continue to build you up instead of allowing it to tear you down. And I still try to stay really physically active, and I still like try to go on the treadmill every day and just find ways to keep my body moving.
yeah,
But definitely there are my moments that I do, of course, I'm not gonna lie, that I get
of
upset and
course.
I'm like, oh my gosh, my what did I wasted so much time. Like I wish I knew sooner that I was going to have this condition, and I wish I knew sooner that I was going to have to give up dance. I would have totally, gone to school for something
Mm.
else or done something else or put my time towards, and but I think at the end of the day I'm happy where I am, and I'm grateful for my diagnosis and this journey that I'm
Mm.
on.
I mean, I have to say that's a beautiful way of looking at this. That you're able to see it like, okay, the time that I had or have been able to do dance and do the thing that I enjoyed back then and even now, right? But that you were able to at least have that you were at least able to have done it for some years. That's a beautiful way of actually
Hmm.
looking at it. But still, I'm sure, or at least for me, there's moments where I'm very frustrated. Why did this has to happen? I guess
Yeah,
many people have that moment, right? That they're just like, damn,
for sure.
life is a lot more complicated, you know. It's
Definitely.
and you're both on medication. You're both taking medication.
I'm
Yeah.
actually
When
off
we,
of I'm actually
well,
off of medication right
Ah,
now
okay.
because I would it was not reacting to my body
Yeah,
in a great way. So right now we just kept with the
yeah,
defibrillator, and unfortunately with HCM there's not really many medications out there that are specifically for our condition. So they put us on very generic like beta blockers. Um but mine, I just was not reacting well. So thank goodness, like my doctors listened, and I'm off of it right now. But Hannah's on it right now.
what are you on a beta blocker too, or?
yeah, so we have been on our fair share of different beta blockers, of course, depending on the doctor you
Yeah.
see, they have, their own little like, hey, this medication, or if they want to make a cocktail for you and mix a few and be like, hey, this will do a little bit of this and this one. And at one point I was like on 12 pills at a time. Thank goodness I'm not. I'm on one. But I was on 12 when I was in heart failure because my body was storing water. So, I was taking diuretics, and then because of diuretics, my potassium is being depleted, so I have to take a bunch of potassium medication. And definitely have had some, trauma with medication. It's not fun, especially I think when you start so young, you kind of get like ill. Like with like the potassium pills was a very struggle for me. Like I found an old bottle because when you're like changing dosage and then you have like all these leftover pills, and you're like, I could start a pharmacy here in my
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
And I opened it up and I literally physically gagged because of like how much was just like their pills were so big and like choking, and I had to take 8 of those a day that it was such a struggle. So it's kind of like coming back and finding, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the best like taking my medication because of having like traumatic events of like, oh, you didn't take enough food and your stomach hurts and all these different pains that it's like, and also like when they said like finding the right medication for you is so important, that it like, hey, this is actually working for me, because sometimes I feel like I don't feel a difference between, even though my doctor probably doesn't want me saying this,
Mm-hmm.
but like sometimes I don't really feel a difference between taking my medication
Yeah.
or not. But it's like finding out like, oh, but why am I taking this
Yeah.
medication? And having good doctors who are like, okay, we understand like what you've been through, but like, hey, this is really what's going to help you, because this is the best that we can do to kind of tame your condition. And really what the beta blocker is doing is just lowering your blood pressure, lowering your rate, because our hearts already, when we get, we'll get fast. So they're trying to like, mediate it as much as they can. So right now I'm taking metropolol, which is I think how you
Mm-hmm.
say it. But yeah, so that I'm taking, and then of course it's always finding the right dosage, because that with that medication it's a little bit tricky because you get really tired very
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
That's one of the big symptoms. So when Bethany finally went on it, because I had been on that medication for quite a bit of time, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm tired." I'm like, "Yeah, no, like it's you gotta like find, it takes time to find the right dosage for you and whatnot." My body now for sure has like I take a lot of medication that's higher dosage just because I still have episodes of tachycardia, and so they're trying to, manage that as best as they can.
Yeah, like I said, life gets a lot more complicated having this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you both have ICDs, right? So I know, Hannah, that you had a cardiac arrest, and I will ask you more
Hmm.
about it in a second. Um, but how, Bethany, for you was it actually to receive an ICD? Because I know, and for both of you, this question kind of goes, right? Because, I mean, for me as well, right? For men in general too, like getting all of a sudden an ICD, your body changes, you look a little bit different. But I could imagine for women, because like beauty is more like of a topic, you know, that it might make you look in a way less perfect. I mean, so I could see that the accepting that could be more difficult for women. And I'm generalizing now, right? But how was it for you actually to receive an ICD?
Yeah, so definitely when I was dancing at the time, and so I was having these syncope episodes. So when they wanted to put the defibrillator in me, they wanted to go with a different model than Hannah had, because they wanted to put one in me that where the wire didn't go
Oh
in
yeah.
my heart but instead went around my heart. And this was due because of them thinking that if I was still dancing and maybe somebody lifted me or grabbed me wrong, that the lead or the wire that goes in the heart or around it could get pulled out of the heart, and puncture my heart. So they went with a bigger device, and I remember I'm sitting there for like the consultation, and he hands me like a device. He goes, "Oh, but it's gone down in size," and I'm looking at this brown chunk of metal, and I'm literally like, "Oh my gosh, that's going in my
Yeah.
body." Like, I'm what? And he's like, "But don't worry, like this is like a model from a few years ago, so it's gotten smaller." Yeah, no, it barely got
Yeah.
smaller, like maybe like a half a
Mm.
centimeter. So I go into do the surgery day, and during the process leading up, I'm kind of glad that they kind of just called me and told me I was having surgery next week instead of thinking about it too much, because I grew up as a dancer. Like, I kid you not, I did have an eating disorder. At one point, I was the girl who'd freak out about a pimple on my face, and I still do. And so now I thought, oh my gosh, now my body is going to have these scars, and I'm going to be flawed, and people are going to think I'm ugly, and I'm deformed, and I'm going to look weird, and I'm never going to be able to wear a bikini
Yeah.
again. And all of that was running through my mind. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get to sit with those thoughts too long, and the surgery happened. And then after the device was implanted, and I don't know if you've seen images on our Instagram page, but mine sticks out pretty fairly on my side. on my left side. And I remember when I finally came to, and the surgeon came in and he goes, "Oh, well, we didn't realize how tiny you were. We had to play with getting the device to fit." And I'm like, "No, do not tell me this right now." I'm like, "This is the last thing I now want to
Yeah.
hear." Now I'm thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, how do I look?" Like, now I probably look like a total freak. And then it was like three to four-ish weeks until I finally actually got to see my scars and see the defibrillator. And I can remember standing in front of the mirror and just smiling so big because I absolutely love my scars. I think they're beautiful now. And through this journey, I've definitely had people like be grossed out by it and not accept it, and that's totally fine. But I'm glad that I found in myself to accept it and to love it and to embrace it. And I think the biggest thing too that I always remember why I needed that defibrillator is knowing that it saved my sister's life. And if she didn't have
Mm.
it, I wouldn't have her here with me today. And so why would I give up the such negative thoughts of not wanting to put a defibrillator in me when I know I needed it?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Has there been any other thoughts that allowed you to accept having an ICD and having the scar?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I see it in photos, or like when I post it myself and I'm happy about it, or when other people are like, "Oh, like," I also love, I think, like when I'm in a situation and somebody is like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, why do you know? That's cool. That makes you who you are." I think that really helps me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I've seen both ways of, like, no offense, but I've seen like guys completely dismiss me because of it, and like, never talk to me again because they don't think
What?
it's, cool or pretty or whatever they want to think.
Mm.
And then it's cool to be in situations where, especially like guys or whatever, are accepting of it and they think it's cool and it's just part of you. And I think that's helped. And then also I've lost friends due to the diagnosis, but I think the ones that sticked around and really, support you and not make you feel like you're, a freak or anything, which nobody is, like we didn't choose this condition, it's just part of us.
Yeah, you're right. Is there actually anything, if someone is listening who has trouble accepting this ICD in them, anything that both of you could tell them that could help them maybe?
Yeah, I would tell them that it's beautiful. And I think it's a journey to find your own self acceptance. But I think it does help when I see like Hannah or our other friends on HeartCharged when they like photograph with their scars or their defibrillators, and I just think it's so beautiful, and it makes me love and appreciate mine more. So I think definitely to be able to find other people and to see it in real life really helps. And talk to your doctor too, because like even if you're nervous about the ICD, they can place it in different places to hide it a little bit more, like Hannah can talk about that. And I think it's just something that you got to feel comfortable with, and to know that you have a voice in this
Yeah,
process.
yeah. So wait, Hannah, your ICD is then placed on your chest, or where is it placed?
No, so it's placed right there, like right here on the left side. But my surgeon, who was so nice, and it's funny because when you get used to, it, you just think, oh, this is like typical, normal, right? Like my surgeon did it, like everybody must do it. But I've had people, even like electrophysiologists who are over, like the doctors over the device, be like, oh my gosh, I love that because my scar is right here. I can't, because I'd have to show you
Oh.
my boob, but it's right here. My score is right alongside my left breast. So the thing is,
Ah, yeah.
when you like when I wear a bikini, unless it's really like cut here, can you really see it? So it's funny with Bethany because Bethany gets to like flaunt hers more, and she does it so proudly, and it's amazing to see the young women who've been impacted by Bethany being so proud of flaunting it and them wanting to do that surgery because they see somebody, because you don't see people on covers of magazines with these type of scars with implanted defibrillators. We have not yet reached that inclusivity of having, heart patients on magazines
Hmm.
like that. And so in our own way, we're trying to do that to kind of normalize it, because we've seen firsthand how people are more accepting when, you kind of take the stand to embrace your imperfections. So yeah, it's like right here on my breast. So he did it really well to hide it. And so even when I see people who have like scars up here in their chest and stuff, it's like, yeah, it was nice that my surgeon was like, no, like the fact that you're a woman, like this is what I do to hide it. That I don't know, you like those people who are thinking like I'm not just gonna go put it in, like thinking this is a person, right? I'm doing this to a human being. And this is also something that's like when you have an ICD, it's like every 10 years you have to go in and get a new one. Like you're being cut up constantly. And I think that's something common in the heart world is sometimes it's not just one surgery is done all. So having somebody thinking like, oh, because I was so like, hey, you need this. Your heart has gotten really thick. You know, you could go into cardiac arrest. You need to do it. That I didn't even think, like, I thought, like, oh, scars. Yeah, that's cool. Like, you know, have a scar, whatever. I didn't really fully process, you know, all the weird little things like that come with having a defibrillator and that how that affects your everyday life or oh my gosh, am I gonna look ugly? Like that never really fully processed in my mind. So it was nice that my surgeon was thinking, you know, hey, where's the best place to place this for a woman that it's in disguise that, you know, if you want it to be, it can be like easily hidden.
Yeah, well done. I mean, like for his side for actually thinking about that. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like, one thing that I think both of you are doing really amazing with HeartCharged, we're going to talk about it more, though, in a minute, but is that you're actually both making, you know, having an ICD and the scars around it look sexy. I think that's something that you're both have done a very good job in, actually. Um, Hannah, like so you had actually a cardiac arrest, right?
Yeah. So after I got it implanted in like 2015 April. Sorry, I'm big on dates, so it's just like happy for me to kind of like reflect on like I have my little anniversaries. So
Mm.
April 10th, 2015 is when I got my ICD implanted, and literally 6 months later, I went into cardiac arrest in my sleep. I was 17 years old, a week into my 17th year of living, and it was on October 23rd, 3:30 in the morning. My heart randomly goes from 50 beats to 256 beats per minute, which anybody, by the time it's reaching that high, your heart isn't really pumping effectively. It's literally just shaking there in your chest, which hence why you need to be defibrillated. But crazy thing is I didn't know I was shocked, which I needed to be shocked twice because the first shock wasn't powerful enough to get my heart back to rhythm, so it sent another shock that I didn't know until I went into my like 6 months checkup
Oh, wow.
with my doctor in December. That when they run the exam of like the device, that they were like, hey, checking it. And then my doctor, which doctors usually never think this person was like, thank God that you got it implanted because I would have been dead. I would have been dead in my sleep because also at that point I was in my own room because a lot of the like I'm like eight of the nine. So, you know, it's like not many people at home anymore. So I'm living in my own room. No one would have known. And so I found out in that appointment, and it was definitely one of those appointments you don't forget. And then seeing the scan and realizing, like, going through my mind what that morning would have been like, you know, who would have woken me up, realizing, like, yeah, like I would have been dead. So it definitely changes your perspective when you find out the exact date and time you would have been dead, right? And like we've always been big on advocating since we got our diagnosing, realizing how many, especially young people, die from this and how preventable it is by just simply getting a heart screening. That, you know, I would do things and like, guys, I could have died. And then that one letter changed to a C to a W of like, I would have died, and I was only 17 years old. So when people are like, oh my gosh, you're too young for heart disease, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not, because cardiac arrest does not care how old
Yeah.
you are, who you are, where you live, what you do. You know, it comes for anybody. And so that greatly impacted me. And my mom always jokes because, you know, getting a defibrillator is not, you know, a cheap thing. You know, we still paid good amount of money out of pocket for it. That my mom was like, I'm glad I didn't see the bill until months later, because to think like, right, where you're like, that's a lot of money. Is it worth it? Because people usually give you like when they implant one, they want it to never go off, right? They're just, it's like a safety net. So it was like, wow, now I know also the price of my life of like how much it was worth it. But obviously it was worth every cent of it because I would not be here, and I don't take that like very lightly. I like to call it like survivor's gratitude, which you'll kind of see with our perspective of like, I'm here. Yes, I've been through a bit of hell, but I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to help anybody who's going through something similar, not to have to endure it. Because, it's hard. Like you obviously understand, like it's tough to be able to like be like, oh my gosh, if one little thing was different in my life, I would not be here. And, especially as a 17-year-old, that's not something that you like want to be thinking about. Like, you know, you like, oh my gosh, what would my life be like, and what do I do with it now, and how I would not be here. But then a year and a half later, I came back to my high school. I had graduated, came back for like a little performance with my friend to do a lip sync battle, and then I was shocked again twice. I don't know, it always happens in two times for me, that I was going into cardiac arrest on stage, but this time I was conscious because when I was sleeping, obviously I was in a deep enough sleep because I was asking my doctor too. I was like, but how come I didn't feel it? Because everyone's telling me it feels like a horse kicking you in the chest. Like I would think that would wake me up. And she was like, no, like you were deep sleep, that you went unconscious, that yeah, it's not powerful enough to bring you like out of it. So that's why you never knew. And we're going on with your life thinking like, oh yeah, I haven't been shocked. And it was hard for me because I got more scared because it's like, oh, this is already gone. It could happen again. But now it's like, the fear of pain is greater than the pain itself, because you're like, oh my gosh, you're thinking the worst. You're thinking like, what's it going to feel like? And then everybody's asking me like, oh, well, you've been shocked. What does it feel like? And it's like, oh, I never felt it. So then when it happened on stage, it was weirdly, in a sense, I was grateful that it happened because I finally knew what it felt like. So I wasn't afraid for it. Does not mean that it didn't hurt like heck. Like, didn't mean it didn't, really hurt. But it was nice to have gone through that. And then what the weird, amazing thing of that is to be able to finally catch it on film so that people could actually see what it looked like and be prepared for if they were shocked by an implanted defibrillator. And we actually had two occasions where somebody, after watching it, like within a week, they got shocked by an implanted defibrillator themselves. And because of that video, they were able to be like, oh my gosh, I think I was, because it looked very similar to when you were shocked by your implanted defibrillator.
Wow, you actually have it on camera. Crazy.
Yeah, no, which is when I was doing presentations, it was hard to find. So then it was like, oh, well, now I finally have my own video that I can share. So we're proud to like have it on YouTube and have on our Instagram page that you can watch. Because I know when I talk to people who've been shocked by their implanted defibrillator, they're like, I don't know if I want to watch that. And you're like, yeah, I completely understand that. I understand not wanting to be like, feel it and see it, but it in a way is nice to know that like, hey, if that little girl, because I had people be like, watching you go through it gave me the strength as like a 40-something-year-old that I was going to be able to get through it too. Because I was only 19 when it happened, and now I'm like 24. So it was like, wow, to see that, like, it, and that's the thing that's been beauty of just sharing our own journey and seeing how much it's given people that extra bit of strength or knowledge to help them get through their own journey.
Hey, my apologies for interrupting the conversation. It will just take a moment. If you like the conversation so far and would like to support the Heart Warrior project, check out the truly awesome looking t-shirts and mugs I created together with an illustrator for fellow Heart Warriors. My goal in creating the t-shirts and mugs was to create something that would help me feel more empowered in the battle that surviving this cardiac arrest has been, and well, still is in many ways. To show not only the world, but also myself, the Heart Warrior that I have become. And by offering the t-shirts and mugs on the Heart Warrior project, I too hope that it can help fellow cardiac arrest survivors feel empowered too. The mug has become my go-to mug. I drink my coffee from it every morning and my tea throughout the day. Also, the t-shirts I personally love so much that I ordered more than a couple of them myself. I frequently wear one throughout the day, and certainly you can see me wear the t-shirt when I'm out climbing. I can only say this: have a look at the t-shirt designs and the mugs, and if you like what you see, I tell you, you won't regret ordering either the t-shirt, the mug, or both of them. Not only will you have a fitting mug and or t-shirt for your current lifestyle, but you'll also be supporting the Heart Warrior Project and help me to continue doing this. In the description of this episode, you can find a link that will take you to the page where you can order both the t-shirt and the mug, or you can also go directly to heartwarriorproject.com to find it. Alright, thanks for taking a moment to listen. Now let's return to the conversation. Yeah, I mean, the fear of getting shocked is real for people, right? When you have an ICD. I actually got shocked, I think 2 months ago for the first time. And it was also in my sleep. So I wasn't... I woke up from it, but I wasn't sure that I woke up from some nightmare or that it was my ICD. So they had to check it in the hospital, actually. I guess also because I wasn't completely conscious when it happened, that the pain, what I felt, it wasn't so painful. Like you said, like I heard many people explain it or describe it. So, but I guess if you're completely conscious, then yeah, it must be a bit more traumatic to have gone through. How for you, Bethany? Like, what is your? Have you had did you have had a shock, or what is your? Do you have like fears about it?
Not, I don't know, fears. I think like just I hope I like if it happens, like like I know or whatever. I'm not sure that it's actually ever. I don't think it has happened. I haven't done like an interrogation on my device in over a year. I'll be honest. But but no, I don't know if I'm scared. I mean, I just hope I'm prepared for, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when Hannah like describing it and saying like that it hurts, and then we've even had friends say like, "Oh yeah, like my husband was driving while he's getting shocked, and I had to pull the car over for him." And I'm like, okay, that gives me a little scare. Like, I hope I'm not like driving, and you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's just scary. But
Yeah, there are better places to get a shock, right?
yeah,
uh, yeah, yeah, driving, oof, yeah, and getting a shock then.
It's crazy how common like having it in your sleep is, because with HCM, yes, it's known as like the number one killer of student athletes. When you think of sudden cardiac arrest, it's always tied to someone doing exercise. And yet, look, like me and you both in our sleep, that sadly there was like a year or so ago, another 17-year-old girl who died in her sleep because they did not know she had a heart condition. So it's crazy how common it is. And it always, I don't know, sometimes it ticks my nerves when people are like, oh, the athletes. It's like, yes, I was an athlete, and my doctor was surprised I hadn't dropped dead, how active I was with the condition I had. But like, I've been shocked doing stuff that's not necessarily known as athletes. And I think we have to kind of be like, yes, because they are using their heart more, but does not mean like we should cover everybody. And that's kind of what we're proud to be able to like have like a program that we started that, gives heart screenings to all students. That's not just geared towards student athletes, because yeah, like what the heck, like like people who dance sometimes aren't considered athletes, or people who do musical theater, stuff that we did that aren't necessarily that athletic stuff, but can still get your heart rating. But then it always comes back to when they're like, yeah, you got to be careful, like exercising. It's like, I can't even sleep. Like, I had a hard time sleeping after getting shocked in my sleep. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like that's where my heart is doing the most crazy stuff. Because even after doing like transmissions, there'd always be like, okay, so at like 1 a.m. or like, 7 a.m. or this time, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm sleeping during that time and my heart's doing random stuff. So it's like, at the end of the day, like you can't even control it as best as you can, because like when I go to sleep, I'm asleep, right? But like how common it is more in your sleep than people think.
Yeah. I have to say, for me, after I got shocked, the first few times when I went to bed, I was a little bit more afraid of going to sleep. Because I was also like, I mean, my cardiac arrest also happened when I was asleep. So it's like a lot of like fears have built up through the years now around sleeping. But I mean, in general, I'm not such an anxious person though. So I'm okay in the end with dealing with it. But still, even me now, I sometimes notice being a little bit more afraid of going to bed. Which in a way is logical, I guess, right? Because something bad happened. I know because we've been talking a bit now, and I know you both have things to do today. But I would still love to talk a little bit about HeartCharged, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So I would be just very curious to know, when did you both decide to start this? Maybe Bethany, if you, yeah,
Yeah.
could tell me.
So, I would say Hannah, especially like after her diagnosis, always did a really good job of advocating and, where she could to tell people, go get your heart screened, do
Mm.
this, do that. And it was actually right after I got my implanted defibrillator. So that's been like 5.5 years ago. And I kept telling Hannah, I was like, Hannah, we got to like use the power of social media. We got to bring people together because there's going to be other, especially young people just like us out there. And as Hannah and I said earlier on this podcast, is that we were so grateful that we've been on this journey together and that we had each other and that we could go to each other when anything felt wrong or, hey, how's this going? So it's like, we got to do it. We got to do it. So then I just started like in my notes phone app on my phone. And I'm just like, what are we going to call it? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And then one summer, I just like really sat down with our mom, who we adore and love so much. And she's really been a part of HeartCharged and helping it so much. And sat down with her and I'm
Cool.
like, okay, what are we going to call it? What's the name? And then actually the name came from, so I was going to do HeartCharged Messages, which is the same acronym as HCM, but then kind of
Ah.
HeartCharged to stick and then kind of came to be. And then I really think it was the right move to do because a month before finally like doing the launch of HeartCharged on Instagram, a young girl my age, small, petite, reached out to me and she's like, hey, I just got diagnosed with HCM and I'm really scared and I don't want to get the defibrillator. And if I ever go, she like travels and she goes on these crazy hikes and her doctor's like, you have to bring a physical AED with you. And she didn't want to get it because the same things that I was going through that I talked about earlier, like that mental health she was struggling with. So we ended up becoming good friends and I would talk to her on the phone and I was like, well, actually I'm going to start HeartCharged and it's all about this. And she found me through a hashtag that I put on my regular personal page. And it was just that moment that I was like, this is key, Hannah, we got to do it. And we're so glad we did. And now HeartCharged kind of is a multi mission kind of after. Not only do we do that patient to patient support, which we love so much, and that's our favorite part, is getting to meet people like you and the people that we meet every day on Instagram, which is incredible, and to see social media used in that way. But we also are big advocates, and like Hannah said, we just got free heart screenings for all students in Miami-Dade County. We've donated AEDs, and then recently one of our AEDs that we donated saved somebody's life, so it's really awesome to hear. We do a
Wow.
lot of advocacy work and we help on try to change legislation and to make a difference and make an impact. So now HeartCharged is an official nonprofit and we kind of put our hands everywhere we can because we just so passionately care to really make sure other people don't feel alone, but that other lives are saved from these preventable conditions.
Which you have done, right? Which is amazing. Like, everything that you've built has actually led to really saving lives.
Yeah,
That must
feels
feel
good.
amazing, or that's what I would think.
No, it feels
No,
it feels
yeah.
good.
It's those moments you reflect on.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And I mean, it's also because we were also like Bethany, you were also saying that you, besides HeartCharged, you're still working full time as well. So you're doing, a full time job, and you're also doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, which is crazy how much to manage both at the same
It
time. And
can be a
maybe it's the
lot.
same for you, Hannah. But yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for both of you that you're doing all this, and I would encourage everyone listening to definitely take a look at the website of HeartCharged, which I will link in the show notes. What else have you planned with HeartCharged? Is there any next things that you're both working on? Anything that you can share?
We're kind of excited. We definitely have some things planned. One of them that we're excited about is kind of doing a profile series on people with HCM. And we're actually hoping to do it in the UK at the end of this year. And we're really excited to be able to to do that and to see where it can lead and hopefully turn into something where more heart warriors are seen and heard, and we're excited for that. So it's a project that we have coming up. We've done a bunch of conferences. We were just in a magazine that came out yesterday that we got to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about, our
so it's
HCM.
cool.
So it has been exciting. I don't know if Hannah, you want to add anything?
Yeah, we're always trying to do something, always trying to think of what ways can we better spread this awareness as being like a filmmaker. There's always like room to make more videos and films that, share heart warrior stories. So there's some few things that I've like pitched that hopefully with like funding we're able to do, as well as like we do again still do legislation stuff that we're going to try for this next legislative session, to hopefully get the HeartCharged Act, the getting cardiac emergency drills and more AEDs in schools, and getting everyone trained on it. We're hoping for our state of Florida this year. But yeah, we're always doing something, and who knows, after this call, we have some exciting collaborations that were in the work to kind of get our message out to more people, because the more people know, the better, because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're always doing something, and every year we always have a fun little like campaign that we focus on, that we put in all of our efforts to bring awareness in a new way. And you'll definitely see our eclectic variety of it on our Instagram page at HeartCharged, of how we try to get that across in, entertaining, bite-sizable ways that everyday people can understand. So there's always something in the works here, and there's always like 27 different things in the works as we, focus, but we're very excited for these collaborations that we have in the work, and we hope that people follow along with our journey and see what we post, and yeah, everyone's welcome in the HeartCharged community, so the more the merrier.
Yeah, and I will say I really love it that you're both making this very, serious topic in a way more fun or something, or you're giving a good light on it, like a fresher feeling on it, not like a very old. It feels very fun and new and young, about a very serious topic. Like you're both doing you're doing a very good job on that, actually, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me ask one more just question for both of you, and then we can wrap around. There's so many more things that I could ask and talk about with you both, but then I guess we will be talking for a couple more hours.
We could do a part
so
two.
Maybe another time. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. For anyone listening, any survivor listening, is there something, some kind of tip or something that you would still want to share with that person? And I know it's maybe a big question, but is there something big or small coming up in your head that has been helpful for you that you want to share? And I could start with you, Bethany.
Okay. I would say the biggest thing that I touched on earlier was to remember that your life doesn't end with the diagnosis. And I think the biggest thing that's helped me along this journey is finding that gratitude. And it doesn't even have to be grateful for the condition, but grateful that, you're here today, or what you can and what you could accomplish that day. And I think sometimes taking it day by day. And then to remember that you're not alone, that seriously, like, the invitation to come to HeartCharged and to always reach out to us is always open, and we're always here for you, and we never ever want anybody to feel alone. And I know how that can feel, so just to remember that you aren't, and there's so many amazing people in here that definitely want to talk to you, and don't ever give up. And if you're having a bad day, my favorite thing is to always buy a new pair of shoes, so maybe go buy something to make you happy. But that's what
Sure.
I want to say.
Yeah. Hannah?
Yeah, it is a big question. But I would say the thing that came to mind is feel it all, in the sense of as a survivor, somebody who, I guess I end up having like a darker sense of humor, and I always say like, oh, now I'm on borrowed time, whatever my time is to go, which sometimes people don't like you to think of it, but I think when you survive something like death, it leaves a toll on you. And I would say, feel it all, like cry, laugh, you're allowed to feel your emotions. And I think I think what's beautiful about you doing this podcast and having these communities is that people can share open-heartedly. And I think that's why you're like, oh, I feel this deeper connection with someone I've never met in person, because we've gone through the unimaginable and we're being honest with each other of how that makes us feel. And I think just owning those emotions and letting it happen, and not letting other people who, haven't been through it dictate how you feel or what you do with it. Like, hey, if you want to take some time to just be alone or do it, like, do that, because, it's a lot. But I think, again, leading to there is a community. So when you are open to wanting to discuss it and talk about it, there are people out there who will understand. And I know sometimes that's a hard thing to really wrap your head around, that, oh, does someone really understand? And I can tell you there is. So please come and talk about it when you're ready to, feel those things, because it is something that you do want to process and do talk about it. It's something you can't just keep to yourself for as long as you would like. So yeah, the invitation is always open. We love answering DMs at like 3 a.m. in the morning or talking about stuff with people. So it's us answering. So we made this because we knew what it felt like to be alone, but also to have each other. And we have both experienced a variety of different things, even though being on the same, diagnosis journey. So we can almost cover every base. But what's beautiful is that if we can't, we have a bunch of people on HeartCharged that we can connect you with, and you can find somebody who may be more exact on your story of what you've been through.
Yeah, community and support is key. Well, thank you both for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for having us.
Likewise.
Literally, thank you.
Thank you
is
so
amazing.
much.
And that concludes yet another episode here on the podcast of the Heart Warrior Project. I do hope you found much value in it here with Bethany and Hanna Keime. Now, again, if you want to see, all the work that they're doing, then check out HeartCharged by going to getheartcharged.org or by checking out the show notes, where you can find any additional resources mentioned here in this episode. And the show notes are located in the description of this episode. With that, I wish you well, and maybe I get to welcome you again on another episode here on the podcast of the Heart Warrior Project. Until then, this is Jellis signing off. Before you go, I just like to remind you of the Heart Warrior t-shirts and mugs I've created together with an illustrator. If you're looking for a fitting t-shirt or mug that will not only show the battle you fought and are still fighting, but also something for yourself to wear and use that will make you feel empowered, these t-shirts and mugs will be a great addition to your life. It certainly has been true for me. Additionally, you will also be supporting the Heart Warrior Project, which will help me to keep this project running. Now, if the t-shirts or mug doesn't speak to you, but you want to support the project, we also accept donations. You can find more info about all this by going to the description of this episode. There you can find a link to where you can order the t-shirts and mugs, as well as other ways to support this project. Or you can go directly to heartwarriorproject.com to find this information.